And now we're going to move on to the next part of the show, which is quite close to me. A lot of people that have been coming on my Facebook page and talking to me privately, etc., have been talking about a thing called the reset. And asking me the question, are you ready for the reset, etc. Well, I don't really know what they're talking about, and I wanted to delve into this much, much deeper for myself and for you, the listeners of People's Internet Radio. So what we have for the rest of the show is I have a special guest, Ray Savage, who is going to come on and really explain to us what the reset is all about. Are you with me, Ray?
I certainly am. Good evening to you, and I'm very pleased to be on here, Sean.
Well, I'm very pleased to have you here, Ray, with me, and looking forward to hearing what you have to say. But before we get into the reset side of things, maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself, Ray, where you come from, and what got you involved in the end with this new project.
Yeah, okay, be very happy to. I'm actually currently based in the southeast of England, in a small village between Lewes and Eastbourne. Actually, Lewes is quite interesting because Lewes is a bit of a reset town. I don't know if you know about Lewes and its bonfire societies and its slightly sort of anarchistic ways. It's home to Thomas Paine, or was home to Thomas Paine, who had quite a major part in resetting the Constitution of the US. Okay. And Lewes is a very interesting place in that it doesn't really subscribe to certain of the laws, particularly when it comes to Guy Fawkes. It's a place that holds some very interesting ceremonies and customs, but perhaps we talk about that later. Yeah, so that's where I am, and my background, well, it's quite varied in actual fact. I spent a lot of career years in the police as a bobby locally. Okay. And sort of fulfilling a number of different roles as one does in the police. A bit in intelligence, and and that certainly enabled me to take a different look on life to perhaps a lot of people, and latterly has helped me join dots and see the world in a way that I haven't latterly been that happy with.
Yeah, okay. So I'm talking to an ex-copper.
You are? Yeah. A lot of years ago. I've been drawing a police pension for a bit now, but. Yeah, an ex-British Bobby.
Ah, okay. Well, welcome to Out of the Bag. Don't think I've had many ex-Bobbies on. So, looking forward to hearing what you have to say about the reset itself. I did recently, obviously knowing that you were coming on the show, have a look a couple of days ago. And you were at, I think it was Balcombe, or a demonstration in England, where you were stating that the radiation coming off various police communication devices were basically affecting everybody there.
Yeah, that's true. Tetra and the radio system that emanates quite powerful electromagnetic radiation is something that's very much concerned me. And it links in very much with your last speaker, actually, from a health point of view. It is a pretty disastrous thing to health, and we can get into talking about that a bit later if you like. But that was flagged up by a great friend of mine, Dr. Barry Trower, who warned the Police Federation a long time ago about the problems that we were going to be facing with the higher incidence of cancers, and it was really great to hear Paul talking about how one can resolve some of those. So that was certainly a good part of the show.
Thank you. No, that was really, really good. So the reset. I mean, straight away there's a question in the chat room. What the hell is the reset?
Okay. Well, the reset's a name that a group of us have applied to a process that I'm going to sort of describe to you, and it's certainly just really a rather catchy phrase that we've liked to put to something that certainly is open to us. We listened to a group of constitutional experts who were telling us that throughout our history, we have had a bit of a constitution sort of formed really from Alfred the Great's times, which is around about sort of 670 that he formed the initial basis of our constitution in this country. And that constitution has sort of grown and become established through the years. And there are a number of times when that constitution was sort of brought back into being. And you could say by some sort of early resets. And apparently this occurred about 40 odd times in our history. And the notable times that it occurred were around Magna Carta in 1215, and also again with the Bill of Rights in 16 somewhere or other. And at those times, really the Constitution was reframed and regrounded, and the Constitution really here is to make sure that there's some sort of fairness of governance and of living, which really comes around comes to this sort of and can be enshrined in the ethos of cause no harm, cause no loss, and a balanced sort of society. And
absolutely, we have the same here, Ray, with with Bunnock na Hare and our Irish Constitution.
Yeah, and I think most people will realise that we're pretty out of sync where that's concerned now. Yes. And that's sort of something with my background personally I've become more and more incensed with, and felt less and less empowered until I listened to these constitutional guys sort of talking and say, no, there is actually a way that we can really reset this, and it comes from the sort of the parish level up. And having been quite involved with a local parish here in the UK, I've realised that the parish system of local governance is still very much in play. I actually did have the privilege to be for about 4 years our local parish chairman, and that was a voted in position. We have certain duties, and it really, you could say it's the lowest constitutional sort of level in our land, and still very much does exist in the villages and the smaller areas. It's been sort of subverted a bit in the towns, but it's still here on the ground.
Okay, so that's where people, I suppose, on the people's level, can have a say. Yes. Absolutely,
yeah. And where you're non-political, where you really get voted in on local issues, and you're expected to do as the locals wish, and if you don't, well, then you get voted out, which is a pretty simple basis. And
that's the way it should be, isn't it? Really,
absolutely.
Instead of allowing the criminals to carry on with their nepotistic criminality.
Yeah, too true. So what the constitutional guys are telling us is that, and this is a process that I've actually seen in operation on a parish level, is that we can indeed, if we're dissatisfied with any part of the system, we can have a local referenda, and you need just 10 people living in a parish to actually call a local referenda, and you can, from that referenda, make representations or elect a representative to go forward to a regional convention that would be attended by a number of said representatives from different parishes. And from those regional conventions, you can actually elect people to go through to a national convention. So you're really talking about a council on a council of properly elected people, and not the sort of system that I understand is prevailing now. And I was in Parliament and was listening to this the other day. I was actually in Parliament on Budget Day, and I was really quite appalled at what was going on. And on one hand, the lack of focus really on localities and local issues, and then even even the acceptance of national issues by a certain sector of the members there. And one thing I heard was that, and this was relating to a particular party, and it's pretty relevant which party because it's going on with all parties, that the party officials are actually telling the localities who they're going to have as their prospective MPs, and literally sort of parachuting in people that have had absolutely no interest in the localities just because they're a well-known figure, and getting these people elected, and they're basically yes men just conforming to a party line, and are really of no relevance to what's going on locally. But that's not certainly the case with all MPs by any means.
No, I'm sure there should be a few that have gone into the political arena, with a true heart and a conscience about them.
Oh yeah, and there seems to be almost two types of MPs in the House from what I can see, but it seems as if there is a prevailing sort of ethos that really just ignores what the heart focused MPs want. and seems to be conforming to a corporate line. But we can talk more about that.
Sure. I have a question actually though, Ray, before you go on, from the chat room. Has your guest read Outlines of Constitutional Law by Chalmers and Asquith?
I'm not a constitutional expert at all. I put my hands up to that. My background is very, very far from constitutional work, and I actually don't have a constitutional guy with me tonight who could actually cover that. So no, I haven't. And
well, he also adds, if not, you really should.
Yeah, well, maybe so. My time is now taken up with actually promoting the idea of a reset, and I'll run on from that.
Grand.
And really, what I'm finding, which is very, very interesting, is when I share the idea of actually coming together as a humanity to bring about something different from the groundswell of local representation up. In a way, it's almost beyond what has taken place before. What I'm finding is there are so many people that one way or another are so dissatisfied with what's going on the planet now, with regard to ecology, with regard to sort of human interaction, certainly with regard to the way the financial systems run, that it's almost as if we actually do not need a process to be told that we can get together and actually create something different. But it's nice to know there is a background and process there. But it's not something that personally I'd be too focused upon. What I'm really focused upon is galvanizing grassroots support for change, and we're calling that change the reset.
Okay. So have you already got your ducks in a row? Have you already got I suppose the people in all the different communities ready to step forward and enter the fray?
Really, Sean, that's really what we're about. We're about actually trying to unify the many different groups out there that are working in the different sectors. The sectors that I've just mentioned. Like ecology, like housing, like clean water, like free energy, or the alternative energy technologies. Really bringing those groups together under one umbrella. And looking at sort of local needs and looking at regional and national needs, but more unifying the many, many groups. And I think one of the greatest works that was done recently was done by Paul Hawken, when he wrote the book Blessed Unrest and did the YouTube piece in 2007, where he identified just so many different groups who were calling for change, but who hadn't actually unified. And I think what we as a group are trying to do is actually to create a unifying process, which we're calling the reset, that will actually bring all those voices together, not in a homogeneous way, but in a harmonious way, but respecting all the differences, but bringing those groups together so that we can be of one voice, and we can actually say to this corporatocracy that really is it's governing everything. Almost this unseen hand, which is becoming more and more seen.
It really would be nice, Ray, if we could put all our differences aside and agree with what we agree on, because we can all see what's happening, and it's really, really stupid to. I suppose they are very happy that the elites and etc. That we're using so many divisory tactics against each other.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And I had a very long conversation with a very dear Muslim friend of mine earlier on this evening, after having sat in a meeting yesterday with a very fascinating Anglican minister who calls himself an absolute renegade. And he'd been interacting with a Druid official, someone who's quite well known. Well, in fact, he's the head Druid in the UK, Philip Cargon. And it's fascinating to hear how many of these different sort of ideologies are really coming together and finding that commonality. And this is where I'm very excited about the reset, because I know its time is here. So it's just great to be just someone that can hopefully help many people come together and drop the weddedness to strong ideological differences and find our commonalities.
Absolutely. And we do have a question, quite a hard-hitting question really, putting you on the spot if you like, from the chat room. Vin's asking, does your guest accept really is looking for your views on this, that the Queen is the only sovereign and that the people are subjects and slaves.
I've heard some constitutional stuff around this and that goes into trust law, but I'm really not the person to answer that question, to tell you the truth.
Where do you stand on it?
I'm much more of a grassroots person, and what I'm is someone to bring people together, and in a way, we've got figureheads, we've got people that proclaim to be this and proclaim to be that, but we've got so many good people in this country who just want to stand together and create something different. And frankly, one or two people who stand up as sort of figureheads, to me, they're pretty irrelevant, really, to the process.
Well, unfortunately, irrelevant or not. Sorry, Ray.
If we as people stand together, those people are going to have to accede to our wishes. And some of the good kings in the past jolly well have, and Alfred was one. I know King John at Magna Carta, many people say, the arm was up his back because the populace said, look, we want this charter and that's the way it's got to be. But look, I'm not a historian, so I'm not the right person to ask that question to. And, I personally think that people power will transcend any of the stuff that.
Well, I'd like to think so myself, Ray. But the amount of Union Jack waving Egypts who think that they're have a sovereign queen and they are subjects to it and her baffles me totally. It really does.
Well, but even talking to those, and I do know some of those people, and bless them, but even they know that what's going on this planet is not for the good of the children that are coming along. And I know some real royalists, but they'll tell you that what's happening here is not right. And most people want to see some sort of change at one level or another. And this is where it's quite exciting talking to people about the potential of a reset and people getting together in commonality.
No, it's a wonderful thing, and of course we're going to have these type of questions. I mean, where does the group of people who what do they call them? Used to be the National Front when I lived in England, BNP or whatever. These people do exist, and we need to be working with them, not against them, and getting that commonality together.
And the great thing with the reset, there is no political affiliation. There is no group that anybody would want, that certainly that I've met so far would want to ostracize. And it's really finding that common ground. And the common ground has to be that, and I think Lynn McTaggart in a book, The Bond, sort of said that we really as human beings, our nature is actually to bond and to care, rather than to be warring and to be, disparate toward each other. So I think that's the sort of the ethos I'm finding. And there are going to be.
Okay, well, I suppose what I'm trying to say, what I was trying to say with that question is that, we're all born sovereign, as much or if, or more than the Queen, because she's demanding that everybody else isn't, or rather her position is and the system is, and that is what we've got. We've got a British, not English, because English people are slaves to the British Crown. We've got the British Crown, we've got the Vatican, we've got all these, ecclesiastical crowns and 13 other crowns and all the rest of it, and this is the economic slavery and, in fact, the conditioned mental slavery as well.
Yeah, I thought the Crown was more about the City of London than the actual any sort of aspect of
you what tell that to the English flag wavers.
What our Queen stands for. Well, there we go. You see, but it's not something I want to delve into because
okay.
I'm taking a pretty simplistic approach, and all I know is that there's such a groundswell of people who want to work together right across the religions, right across the social divides,
and right across the globe as well. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Gosh, yeah. I've got a very good friend in Michael Tellinger who is trying to do something down in South Africa to bring some sort of normality and. Yeah, it is. It's absolutely right across the globe, and that's exciting. I don't think there's ever been a time, we're facing multiple crises, but we're also just a step away from something so different. And we just need some catalysts, and I think the reset's a great catalyst.
Okay, so reset, you've obviously, you've now gone public with it, or rather, there is the reset.org, if people want to look at that. I'll just pop that website into the chat room as well. So it's www.thereset.org.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll pop that into the chat room for people to have a look at the website, and now people have heard that as well. How far, now that you've gone public with it, how far are you along? Is it, don't get me wrong, but is it just an idea that hasn't really been taken to the next level, or is it already that you've done so much work in the background that you're ready to reset pretty much straight away?
No, I would say that we're only fairly much just starting. We've been putting the idea out in the last month. The website only went live 4 days ago, so that's quite new, and it's certainly had quite a number of hits and quite a number of logins. There is a part on the website there where one has the opportunity to log in to identify your place, and certainly when we get enough people in a particular area, we'll focus on that area and then start looking at holding a local referenda. But be looking for ambassadors in those areas that can actually collate and work with the people in that area. So really, what we're looking for at the moment are hotbeds of activity around the country, and we've got a few of those already sort of showing up. Yeah, so it really is. It's pretty embryonic, but we've tested it and just seems to be getting yeses all over the place. So it is early days, but we've got some pretty good ideas. The goal really is 2015, May, June 2015, because in May, June 2015, there is the 800th anniversary of Magna Carta, and our idea would be to have a new Great Charter, really stamped, signed, sealed, whatever the constitutional guys would call it, by that time, but in my mind, have enough of a groundswell of people to actually be starting to implement major change. And it just so it happens that is just around election time for next year. And when I take the pulse of the people who are looking at the total disarray with our politics, I don't think that's going to be much of a sort of an event, that election. So I think there's a very, very good chance of, to a certain extent, creating something completely new by this time next year.
Yeah, well, I'd like to think so. I mean, obviously, history tells us that things like this don't often have an easy ride. I mean, what is it going to be? Lots of independents stepping forward and competing against councillors and politicians within their vicinities, is it?
Do you know, I don't think we can even call that, with the precipitant sort of stuff that is in the pipeline and the feeling that everybody has that we're entering a period of such incredible change. I don't think we can even look back and remotely think that we've ever been in a place of such multiple crises with the potential of such multiple opportunities for change that we've ever come upon. And we've got this wonderful thing, the internet, internet radios like the one we're on tonight, and just such ability to connect so fast all across the planet that I don't think we can even call the next 2 months. And the change that could occur could be just so huge.
Well, it'd be lovely. I want to wake up tomorrow morning, actually, Ray, and someone tap me on the shoulder and say, "Look, it's all sorted, Sean. You can calm down. It's grand. Your children will be looked after in the future."
I think we've got a bit of work to do before then, but I also do see some huge catalysts on the way. And when one looks at the alternative news and you see what is being revealed, and people's awareness of just something so much beyond what we've been led to believe is our reality, our existence, and what's being hidden from sight that this show and many others that are going out are revealing, then we're in a huge period of change. So I don't think we would be looking at normal elections, to tell you the truth, this time next year. I think we're looking at something completely different.
Okay, well,
I say that in a way, feeling the pulse of Parliament the other day when I was there on Budget Day, and just the irrelevance of some of the talk. I was in a room where the young Conservatives were actually talking about how they would possibly regenerate their party. And it was absurd, some of the stuff that was being talked about. And they're talking about forming an alliance with UKIP as the only way that there's a possibility, not about policies, not about sort of any major changes.
Yeah. Who's positively in the news at the moment? Who can we stick our flag on? Who can we join? Who can we join that the conditioned masses have been fooled into thinking is the next big
But I
thing?
don't think the masses are actually fooled anymore, you know. I think most of them actually switched off to it.
Well, do you know what? I think you're right, because, I mean, about 30 years ago when I was spouting the stuff in my teen years about what was going on, and back then I remember being called insane and you're a loony and all the rest of it, you know, 30 years down the road, you can have a conversation like this in any pub, on the bus.
Yeah.
You meet people in the street and they are more clued in. They might be, you know, as they were before, trapped in their 9-to-5s, trapped in their, you know, having to put the food on the table the way that's always been for them. But they definitely are totally aware of more global issues and local issues than they've ever been before.
I couldn't agree with you more, Sean. And what I'm finding is it's so easy to engage someone in a conversation where they absolutely see the need for some sort of major change. And when you start to pitch the idea of reset, it's like, yeah, bring it on. You know, how can we help? What can we do? And the other thing that you just mentioned there, the number of people that actually are questioning at a very deep level what they're doing and stepping away from it. I was earlier today with a colleague who's he's not actually not in the same force that I was with, and I'll be just a tad careful what I'm saying here. But he hasn't been able to go to work for quite some period because of the situation within the police area that he's working within, because he's just seen problem after problem after problem, and he's been in a fairly senior position, and that is reflected by many, many people in that organisation. And that organisation are actually losing more police than they can, recruit. And that's happening. There's so many people that are saying, sorry, but I can't put up with this nonsense anymore. And are dropping out and are doing different things. Personally, I know 3 that have left before remotely picking up their pensions, that have left the force recently, and they're good people who've been well trained and are saying, no, I can't do it. It's not fitting with me. I can't put up with the lies. I can't put up with the lack of proper investigation. I can't put up with what I'm standing for here. And I tell you what, it doesn't just pervade the police. It pervades the legal profession. It pervades the health profession. And your previous talker was talking about that. And it goes through most of what you would call now the institutions that are really not supporting humanity, that are just there to drag the money out of and make a profit out of humanity.
Yeah, absolutely. No, couldn't agree with you more on that one. I've definitely got some negative comments about the whole situation, the whole reset, and obviously the fact that you're an ex-copper and all that type of stuff. Are you a Freemason and all these type of questions?
I can answer that one very quickly. No, I was offered it and I would never go near it.
Okay, that's great.
Because anything that can't be done openly and above board, to me, was not something that ever should be countenanced, and I couldn't ever cope with that.
Yeah, okay, well we've, I'll give you an example of a really good comment that's in there, and it's one that would be close to my heart as well. Richard Colson, he's a good friend of mine actually, so hi Richard. He says, I hear a lot of talk about nothing of any real substance. Beware of disinformation artists. And really that's what's going to be levelled at people coming forward with the reset, isn't it? And we're going to have to answer those questions.
I would say, why not flip the coin and trust? What is wrong with trusting and getting together with good people who actually would like to see some change and like to do something different? And I think I would prefer, and this has probably been my ethos through life, is to trust and just go and just see what happens. It's very easy to distrust. The great thing is...
put it this way. It's not a case of distrusting in a way. It's a case of understanding what's really out there. And, when you sort of evaded the question, if you like, about the Queen thing, well, it's very important that we know that you're not still oathed to the Queen. It's very important that we know that individuals care about humanity and everyone as an equal, and not be, I suppose, in a position where, you are trusting another system altogether and really coming in the back door. Does that make sense?
Sort of yes and no. I don't actually trust any systems. I suppose.
Well, I do. There are things that we can't.
The system
there are things that we don't change, Ray, and they're the things that work. And the things that have worked for years.
The moment you put a system in, you actually have got a container and you're creating something that can be subverted. I actually think that we've got to drop systems and we've got to put together something that is not systemized. We've got to put together that something has no hierarchy. We've got to put together something that actually just recognizes our sentience as creatures on this planet with the other creatures on this planet, and I'm talking about everything that's growing and that's living, and that we live in some symbiosis and some harmony, and it's something that we actually haven't seen, certainly not in the last 2,000, 3,000 years of our recorded history. And
but good people in those 3,000 years, Ray.
I have no allegiance to anybody other than to myself. And to doing decent things toward other people. Okay. It's that old tenet, isn't it? Cause no harm, cause no loss.
Absolutely. So, in other words, would we be now? Sorry, Ray. Would we be now in a situation? Ray, would we be now in a situation where, like for example, I know that there's a lot of English coppers who are Freemasons. So you are aware that there are a lot who join the Freemasons who do take that promise of a better life for their families and all that bullshit and go for it, and that's really their party line, if you wish. But we are in a situation where I'd love it if things were consciously moving, and policemen, for example, who are in that position of trust under the oath of protection and all the rest of it, if they would arrest their superiors because they're criminals, because we can see it.
I don't know many that have been offered that and refused it, and I also know quite a few that have actually been it and gone into that and actually come out with disgust at what actually goes on. And I would say the greater number of coppers on the ground are not members of Masonry, and that's probably the reason that you've got so many now coming out, because they're actually seeing the perhaps
I wish they'd come out.
Small hardcore who are espousing that direction and are becoming more and more obvious, and it's becoming more and more obvious to people.
Well, the ones that come out will be lauded. The ones that come out will be lauded much more, Ray, if they come out waving flags and whistleblowing on all the shite that's really going on, because we genuinely really need to get this corruption out of our systems, and that's the reset, isn't it?
Oh, totally. Absolutely, totally. And it is being revealed. Look at people like Tony Farrell. I don't know whether Tony's been on your show, and I've supported Tony because he went through some real tough stuff. But, look at people like him. And, there's stuff going on that there are many good people who currently are in this paradox of having to keep a roof over their head. And this is the big one, of course. And we haven't got round to what the reset are really feeling about sort of the financial situation. This is a big hook that a lot of people are saying yes to. But yeah, a lot of people are caught up in that sort of financial paradox. The guy I was with earlier, he is on a fair salary. He has to pay a mortgage. He has to live. And, whilst we know the illegality of mortgages, securitization and all that stuff, it's nevertheless, when you're trying to maintain a family, it puts you in a very difficult position. And of course, the controllers, that's the position they've obviously engineered for us. But if we start to stand together en masse, then that situation just completely changes. And there's more and more people willing to do that, and more groups are actually coming together around that ethos.
Well, I'm very happy that you were willing to, and I apologise for the sort of questioning because you're an ex-cop.
No, please do. Please bring it on, because, I think it's very important, and it's also very important for people out there to realise that there's some bloody good guys within, and they're stuck within, and they don't want to be within. I can tell you, I could give you a number of names. They do not want to be, and what they see is absolute shit going on. And they don't want to be part of it, but they're stuck. Where do you replace that income?
Yeah, no, well, easily actually. I've left jobs and gone penniless rather than sell my bloody soul. Seriously, You know, so, and I'm sure many people are doing that now.
By the droves. As I said to you earlier, by the droves, to a point where the major police force in this country actually now can't keep up with the loss.
Well, they've started employing Dumbos now and thugs. That's what they've done. Which is very sad. And the Bobby on the street, you said you were a Bobby on the street, you know, is a thing of the past, sadly.
Yeah. Well,
they were respected. They were treated with trust as well, and they were trustworthy.
Well, someone who had local knowledge, someone who could relate to the local situation. Do you know when I joined the force? I joined the force before we even had personal radios, so it gives you some idea of my age. And I joined in an area, a small town, with a population probably then of about sort of 17,000. And we had a nil crime rate. We actually did not have a crime problem because we had such a cohesive community. And this was in the 60s, such a cohesive community that crime wasn't prevalent. And there was no need for crime because everybody was pretty well looked after. And you look at what's happened in those sort of 50 or so intervening years. And we have to question why, and well, we all know why. You know, we've all been manipulated one way or another, but we've also acquiesced to it. So in a way we can look at ourselves and think, okay, fine, we've had our eye off the ball, now our eye is back on the ball, now's the time for big change. And it's going to happen. It is.
Okay, well that is fantastic, and I'm very, very positive. Obviously, we've got to talk and air about the negative side of things. It's very important for people to know of Agenda 21 and know of the EU and the UN's agenda, to know about what's going on with our foods and our waters, as we've been talking about earlier with Paul. To know also what's happening with our politicians in every country being basically, puppets to the main shadow government. So, that type of stuff is very, very important to get across. It's also very, very, very important that when something comes along that is new, like the reset, it is able to prove that it isn't common purpose. It isn't some insidious propaganda machine to keep us basically down the road where we are now.
I couldn't agree more with you. Certainly well aware of common purpose and its encouragement to dysfunctionality in many of the great organisations of today. And I'm no fan of Julia Middleton, I can tell you.
No, exactly. I don't think she has any fans. Actually, she only has just lackeys. Ask him about the constant dead bodies being found on royal properties. That's interesting, but probably off topic, James. We'll talk about that another day, maybe. Okay, so where are we going with the reset then? Where are you with it? Is it really just an idea and a concept?
Well, no. One of the hooks for the reset, and this again has been worked out by some of the financial people that have been sort of involved with it prior to its launch, was the fact that we've got, and I'm sure no one's going to disagree with this, we have a tax system that is really just geared to keep impoverished a certain sector of society, namely the poor that are being made poorer, the middle classes that are being certainly made poorer, and and latterly, and this is just so amazing, the infirm and the disabled who now are actually being targeted, which I just find so reprehensible. And one of the MPs I was talking to the other day was actually saying that he was part of a committee. In fact, he chaired a committee to try and get one of the latest bills that was going through that was going to impact severely disabled people and their allowances under these austerity measures that, of course, are absolutely ridiculous. And they issued a vote and a communique to the minister, and the minister just completely ignored that vote. And that vote was something like 125 to 2. And this committee had sat for quite a number of occasions. They'd come up with the verdict that this new law that was coming out needed proper scrutiny and actually needed a judicial review or something like that. Okay. And the minister completely ignored it. So the politician who ran that committee, Michael Meacher, and he won't mind me using his name, he actually said to me, he said, Ray, he said, accountability now has completely collapsed within this institution. So and people on your radio station are not going to be surprised at hearing that. But for the average person, and I've used that, for the average person who perhaps up until maybe a while ago had a bit of faith in our political system, to actually hear someone who's invested their 40 years of their life into that system and was environment minister and stood up against Monsanto and lost his job because of that, actually turning around and saying there is no accountability at all, it's finished. It's quite a shock for some people.
It is a shock. And so the reset, when it comes about, are we going to be arresting the dodgy politicians, the bankers, the people that are creating this shit on our planet?
Do you know, I'm not sure what will actually happen. I actually like the model that occurred in South Africa and to a certain extent was tried in Northern Ireland with the Truth and Reconciliation. There was a lot of good work done out there, and I know Desmond Tutu and one or two people from this country were involved in that. But I can't look that far ahead. We're going to have to get in teams of experts to deal with that sort of stuff. You know, I really look upon my role as this, just to really start this going and sort of help other people drive it.
You see, I suppose I was hoping, Ray, that, you know, you'd have looked at the economy and therefore I could have said to you, oh, so you know mathematically perfected economy. How do you think of it as a great solution for the economy side for the globe?
Well, I haven't got around to the economy. I was just going to talk about tax, actually, because tax, we were just starting to get onto, is to me, is one of the great hooks. And we were starting to talk about that, with the disparity that there is, between the rich and the poor. And we all know, we've all heard the figures of 85 people on this planet now having a net worth individually of more than 46% of the populace, which is absolutely and utterly obtuse. Yeah. And that exponential growth is just getting more, and you can tell how it's happening. It's happening through the corporate control and the acquiescence of our so-called politicians. And not all of them by any means. But, no, what the reset is actually saying is that we could change our tax base, quite easily from the current system, which is really, really ripping off the people that can barely afford to live and really putting it in the pockets of the few. Our tax take in 2012 was something in the region of just under 500 billion. Through the Exchequer. And there's about 300 different taxes, if you count every blooming license and whatever that's paid, right down to some ridiculous things. If you abolished all of those tomorrow and put a 1% levy on every commercial bank transfer, you'd actually up the tax take by $1 trillion. That 500 billion would become 1.5 trillion. And these are figures that have been worked out and are fairly readily accepted. With 1.5 trillion, you'd be able to pay every adult male and female in this country a living wage of about 7,500 and give every constituency, and these are round figures, about 200 million to actually spend on itself locally to reinvigorate everything that is necessary. Now that's just a for instance of how you could twist things. And then of course, you could get rid of usury, you could have something like the Bravery Pound Bill, and there are a number of different banking systems that are suggested. And, and someone apparently I heard today from someone fairly well in the know, someone apparently in the Bank of England actually said, until they were shut up, that, we could be printing our own notes and we could get away from usury straight away. There's nothing to stop it other than the despotic corporate rulers that we've got that are running us. So just a twist on our finances in that way could really reinvigorate. And something I heard at a very interesting conference in London just a few days ago was a PhD student sort of saying that there's been studies done of places where they've given people a real good working minimum wage from the profits of a country. And instead of them, and this is always what the despotic rulers would have you believe, instead of people sitting on their backsides and doing nothing, people become entrepreneurial, start to invest, and actually it creates something so different in the way of a sort of an enthusiastic way of living than people who have to go around sort of scraping. And it reinvigorates. So, there's a possibility for one.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't take a brain surgeon to see what's going on. for example, okay, I'll pick one at the top of my head. If I was given the Irish budget for energy, in the knowledge now that I know that energy devices exist that can create pretty much free energy, not saying it's free energy, because there are resources needed to build the units, etc., and they need upkeep, but it would create jobs, it would do all sorts. So there's lots of benefits from going that direction. Not only that, it would take us away from the problems of being hooked into, war-torn oil barons and all the rest of it. But with that budget, I can't quote that off the top of my head because I haven't got the details here, but it's a lot. And for that amount, every single house, business, hotel, etc. in Ireland could have near enough free energy in the 1 year with the one budget used, and that tax could not have to be collected for accumulative years after that.
Yeah, Sean, I've heard that sort of stuff, and one of the big things that I actually have pursued over the last few years is the breakthrough energy movement. I've been through to the breakthrough energy movement conferences, and they've probably been some of the most exciting places that I've been, and I've met some of the most really outward going people who have, in a way, a very hopeful view of where we can go, and without doubt, energy is the biggie. Energy is the elephant in the room when you really think how dramatically we've been wedded to the petrochemical industry. The petrochemical, pharmaceutical, military, industrial complex, to give
the whole thing is joined together, isn't it? And the problem is they do have the military behind them, Ray.
Well, you say that, but I'm meeting, I've got a relative who's in the military, and I could not believe as a young man just how long it took him to suss out what was going on. And he said to me, Uncle Ray, he said this is all about smuggling drugs, this business in Afghanistan, and he's only a young man.
Yeah, well, it's bigger than that, isn't it? I mean, they give us the information. It's also an oil pipeline that wants to go through China, Russia, and all the way through Europe.
But I mean, for even the military to be dissatisfied, a lot of them to be dissatisfied with what they're doing.
Until they seriously, I don't see a dissatisfaction until they put their bloody guns down and stop killing people in foreign countries, in my opinion.
I think that will probably happen in the not too distant future, to tell you the truth.
That would be nice. And the biggest fear is the same fear that you've come across with your your police friends, is that, they need to earn a living. Well, do you know what? There are many, many ways to earn a living. I don't care if they go bloody paintballing at the weekend to get their angst out,
There are many that are changing, and that is the heartening thing. It's like the people leaving the force. There are many, many doing that, many just questioning what they're doing and saying, okay, fine, we're going to go for broke rather than keep doing this. And
I have to say as well, Ray, welcome to People's Internet Radio. We were called TNS Radio, then we became MSI Radio, and now we are People's Internet Radio. The blessed trinity they've had of us, okay? But the people, the shows, the information, you are really going to love it. And I think anyone involved with this reset, with the reset, okay, should really come in, look at some of the old podcasts, look at the truth about everyone's sovereignty. It is only a label, and after we all realise we are all sovereign, it's not needed, okay? It's back to the one true law, like you said, harm nothing and its property, or their property. So it really is a great place to be. UK Prepper has put into the chat room, basically anyone belonging to the reset should have been in here. We've been doing this for years, and getting the information out is really, really important. So I suggest you listen to things like Mr. T Pods, Vin. My shows just invite you guys on to tell the world what you're doing and how it is. So I'm a jack of all subjects and a master of none. A bit like what you're telling me you are, Ray.
Yeah, you've got it in one. Absolutely, totally. Really, all I want to see is a different planet, inhabited by the likes of people like us who just want some jolly good unity and have some good fun. and enjoyment in life, and absolutely enjoy what's out there in abundance. And
yeah, without having to, when we flick our light switches on, we know that it's not damaging the planet. When we feed our children, we know we're not poisoning them, making them sick, etc.
And when we can have access to the health sort of stuff that Paul's talking about, freely, gosh, shouldn't that stuff be subsidised or paid for by our system rather than us putting money in the pockets of the pharmaceuticals that are killing us?
Nah. Absolutely. The money saved by the sickness created by the pharmaceutical industry could be easily put into, the poor people of this planet having this treatment and those treatments for free.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
That's what we should be doing. So listen, I've been asked a question. I've been asked it 3 times in the chat room and 3 times privately. I wasn't going to ask the question, but I am going to ask it now. But then we're going to put the police situation, knock it on the head, guys. UK Prepper has asked me, Sean.
It was a long time ago, and I'm so far from that. In fact, I'm actually now, I think, more years away from it than I was with it, and certainly far more years away from it in age than I was with it. But go on.
Can I ask you your age, Ray?
Yeah, I'm 65.
You're 65. Okay. So people
old age pensioner this year, if I ever get to draw it, the way that the cuts are coming.
Well, hopefully the system won't exist with this reset, will it?
Precisely. Who will need it?
Well, I'm going to ask you this question anyway, because it was when you were in the force. And it doesn't matter when that is. And also, I do want to stress to UK Prepper is that we do learn. I know people in the oil industry who now aren't in the oil industry, and they are well annoyed with what they used to be falling for in the past.
Can I just say, Sean, that I detected a major sea change in the force when it became corporatized, and I wouldn't have been able to have told you it had become corporatized, but looking back, I can remember exactly when it became corporatized. It became corporatized with a piece of legislation called the PACE, the Police and Criminal Evidence Act. That was the start of it, and that was in 1982. And I left in 1983.
Well, it doesn't matter. I'm still going to ask you the question.
Couldn't stick with it.
I'm going to ask you the question anyway. Sean, can you ask him what he thought of the rest of the population when he was an officer?
Well, do you know, I think I must have had a pretty charmed career because I really found the interaction between police and public in those days was a bit more symptomatic of and I don't know how many of your listeners will remember Dixon of Dock Green.
Well, I remember it.
But of that sort of era of policing, to tell you the truth. And we always had a very, very good relationship, but it wasn't until PACE came in that relationship started to become very strained, because instead of being what I would call servants to the public, to support the public and to provide really a balanced law and order situation, and certainly not to be the tools of the corporates, that was resisted massively. In fact, I almost didn't really experience it until perhaps the very end of my career. No, I really enjoyed a lot of the years, particularly the active years of actually being out, because I was part of specialist squads in the latter years. But certainly the years of communicating with the public were really, really good years, and we had some magic moments of interaction. But that did massively change, and as soon as the corporate sort of stranglehold started, and you started then with the fines and the cameras and the fixed penalty tickets and all that stuff that frankly was corporately led, that's when the rot set in, and that's when the big changes occurred, and we lost our independent British police forces, because each police force was run by a locality. When I joined, we had the boroughs, or they were the old burghs. There was Brighton,
the shires, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was Eastbourne. And some of those forces, they were run for the people, by the people, voted in by the people. And they had to stand. And the policing levels were so different to today. The number of guys that were out there, doing the job of community policing were just amazing in numbers in comparison with what we have today. When you think that we're paying a rate levy, as if we still have those numbers, and we don't have anything remotely like those numbers. And the rates are just obviously taken from us, just really like everything else as a tax.
It's really sad, Ray, to see. I can only speak at the Gardaí over here, and what I see that the head of the Gardaí, Callanan, actually resigned this week over a whistleblowing incident here in Ireland, so that's big news over here. Having said that, they're just going to replace him with another puppet at the top who's going to say yes to all the fat cats further up.
Yeah.
So the corporatism, as you say, is just unbelievable. They're floated on the stock exchange.
Yeah.
You know, they can't possibly be upholding any oath to the people by being corporatized.
I'm not even sure, do they take an oath now to the people? I don't even know that. I know that was modified from the oath that I took all those years ago. I had an incident recently where I was asked to go and sit and listen to someone sort of spouting some stuff, and I had to say to this guy, I said, did you take an oath when you started? Because you're certainly not upholding it in the way you're behaving.
Yeah, well, then they're not educated enough to understand the oath they're taking. And I think now you do need a very low intelligence quota to get into the police force, sadly.
Well, that's very interesting because in the 80s, again, I saw psychometric testing come in. And that's something I totally disagreed with, because what that psychometric testing was doing on one hand was actually looking for people that had a sort of aggressive tendencies. And again, I didn't totally put two and two together to actually see what was going on there, but it wasn't very long before I could see it.
No. Okay, well, the reset itself, we've spent a lot of time not attacking, but airing, your connection to the police force, and that really is a bit unfair of us, to be honest. But the reset itself, it does sound to me like, I could be sitting around a fire at Glastonbury and some stoners going, I've got a great idea. Nothing's really in stone, is it? I mean, what's happening?
How do you mean in stone?
Okay, if I was to go public with the reset, I would have, I suppose, people willing to step forward. They'd have to be ready, prepared to take on the next election campaign. There would be there'd be doctors, other doctors who would just say, right, we're taking over the practices, this is how we are doing it in the future, and the hospitals and all the rest of it would be run the best way they possibly could, etc. It would be ready to rock and roll. It would be there. Economy-wise, MPE would be explained and pushed out as the solution to our economic woes, etc., etc. I mean, what I'm saying is this just a website called The Reset? Now, I'm sure Tony's going to give me a slap on the arse when he talks to me again, metaphorically. But I really want to know what's there. Like in Ireland at the moment, we do have some independent politicians. Well, they're brand new to being politicians. They're people from the local community who are now going to become the next councillors if they get voted in, etc., etc. Now, we have a media, obviously similar to the British media, where it is the British media, really. We call Royal Television Era, RTE over here. It's a situation where we genuinely have to make sure that the people know to be able to support these people, that they're not going to be brainwashed and lied to about us stepping forward and that we're criminals or there's something wrong with us or we're going to get slagged off. We've got to be prepared for it. And I suppose what I'm asking is, what ducks have you in a row, or is it really just the concept, the idea that is being pushed forward?
I think it's neither in actual fact, and I think it's actually something that we almost are at the moment not conceiving, because I think both of what you're talking about to a certain extent, and absolutely no disrespect, is the old way. I think what we're looking here is we're looking at a symbiosis of thought processes, and beyond that, we actually haven't even landed on this planet yet. And someone described this, I think, quite beautifully and conceptually the other day. It basically said, look, we're leaving behind, and we all are absolutely feeling this, we're leaving behind an old paradigm, a paradigm of hierarchical control, which is painfully, obviously, been incredibly patriarchal, male-dominated, that's actually coming to an end. And we're going to a new paradigm, and we're on the bridge. And until we actually start taking the steps and walking toward that new paradigm, we have an event horizon opening up in front of us, and we've got to start taking those steps.
Well, with the greatest of respect.
Step by step. And until we start doing that, we actually can't really see what we're doing. But what we're finding is by actually starting to take those steps, We've got key people coming to us from the key areas who are saying, just like the Paul who was talking on your radio show earlier, these are guys who've got a magic part of the future and want to really share that and want to be part of it. And when there's a groundswell of people who are actually saying, yeah, we'd far rather go with you than go with what some corporatocracy is actually saying to us, that's the way we're going to go. And it's not going to be bedded in any of the systems of the past. And I absolutely...
Okay, I think you got... Ray, I'm going to cut across you, man, because you totally got me the wrong way.
Oh, I know, okay? I'm getting you.
No, you really did. Okay, so what I'm going to actually say to you is this. I know, just as everyone here knows, and we're trapped in it really because the system still exists, that there has been a paradigm shift. That's why people are realizing and the veils are being lifted, etc. But what I was trying to say is, have we got these things in place? Because I know Paul, who was on my show earlier, isn't allowed to say what he wants to say, isn't allowed to go forward with what he's going to say because of what... Hang on.
Sorry, go
because
on.
of what... Sorry about this, Ray.
No, go on.
Because of what exists. Now, what I'm saying to you is, it's all well and good to talk about a new paradigm. It's all well and good to talk about our whole consciousness is going to shift. But do you know what? This isn't anything to do with a gender issue. We had a matriarchy centuries ago before we had a patriarchy, and that was shite as well. What we need to do is we have a complete nothing to do with gender. We have, and Vin has just put it into the chat room. We have a psycho issue, not a gender issue. We've got psychos in charge because Merkel, she's female, I think. The Queen, she's female, I think. It's nothing to do with gender. And the point I was trying to make is that we are in the situation. What have we got to change that situation? What have we got? And I'm using your word, the reset. What have we got to reset it with? We can't just come forward and say, got a great idea, can't have that, don't like that, change that, and not have anything to replace it. Well, I'm stressing we definitely need something to replace it. I can understand that MPE is the solution because I've looked at everything else. And I'm not saying there isn't one that can be called something else but be pretty much the same thing. But we genuinely have to have these things in a row. I'm asking, have we got them? Where are they? And what are we going to do to move forward? And it isn't a case of because these people are going to fight back. These are psychopaths in charge of our planet at the moment. And until we take them down by absolutely everybody being behind the reset, and the only way to get them behind the reset is to have the solutions already there.
Well, I think we know what the solutions are, and there's so many different groups on this planet, and I referred to Blessed Unrest and the thousands of different groups that are across the planet. We have the solutions. What we haven't done is we haven't unified and worked together. We've been disparate. We've been acquiescing to this corporate globalist sort of regime. We haven't had our eye on the ball to the point that we have now. We're now in this sort of catalyzing moment, which is very exciting as far as I'm concerned. And what we lack is a unity. And with a unity of all the good people, and you certainly obviously are, and I'm remiss for not actually hearing more of your show, but Tony certainly is someone that I hear from on a very regular basis, and I think he's pretty abreast of what is going on. But what we lack is a unification of the abilities that are in abundance out there, and you know that from the people that you get on this show, and bringing all the qualities of those people together under really a direction that we just happen to have coined the phrase for the reset.
Well, I understand that.
Whose time has come. But specifics, I don't think we're in a time for specifics. The moment you put...
Ray, we really are, Ray.
But no, hang on. The moment you put specifics in, you actually create boundaries, and we do not need boundaries. That has been what's constrained us in the past. We don't need those at all.
Okay, but here we go, Ray.
We need to be far more organic in our approach. And I'm very, very strong in this because I've been in so many different circles recently where if you allow the process just to unfold, it's amazing what can unfold and what unification can occur and what collaboration can start and what can actually evolve from that. And more precise than that, I don't think we need to be.
Fully understood that that's your position. But my position is this. I'm seeing Roger Hayes and the Lawful Bank. I'm seeing MPE. I'm seeing various other groups.
What is MPE? You keep saying that. I don't even know what that is.
Well, great. I'd love you to study it. It's called Mathematically Perfected Economy. It was designed and created by a guy called Mike Montagna. He presented it as a genius child, if you like, or a young man to the Carter and the Reagan administrations, and therefore it was suppressed. That's what it is. Okay. I'm not an expert on it, but...
No, well, I'm no expert on finance either.
Yeah, okay, but as I say...
I'm a people person.
Well, Ray, so am I, and I love you, and I hope I'm not cutting across you too much.
But no, not at all, Sean. I'm enjoying it.
Great. This is such an important place in history. We're so lucky to be here. But what I don't want us to do is to feck it all up, okay? And the thing is, we are already with groups, still keeping our groups head separate by going, our group's right, or our group's right, or our group's right. And I'm thinking, oh no, you're all right. And you all need to get together and show each other what that rightness is.
I could not, Sean, agree with you more. And I think the more of us that actually articulate that, and I'm not wedded to any names or groups, but the more we can get together and we can actually share and work out communally the way forward, the better this is going to be, and the more easy and the more fun and the quicker it's going to happen. Yeah, and obviously your show sounds like a real melting pot for that to happen.
Well, I certainly hope so. I wouldn't be doing it otherwise. I didn't want a radio show. I've said it many, many times. I'm a performing poet. That's what I do. So to be honest, I want us to be the new media, for example.
Yeah, well, I reckon you're well on the way, aren't you?
Well, I think we are. And for a hub of such a place, what better place to have it than on the internet globally? Next should be TV. We should be having our newspapers. We should take over the media because we are going to tell people the truth, still entertain, still have satirical, still have art and creation and all the rest of it, but this time without a feckin' agenda.
No, I love it.
Now, Vin in the chat room, and it's up to yourself, has asked my guest to pull out a poem. What I actually do as my act, Ray, and you probably aren't aware of this, is that I get up on stage and I have a bag with 200 poems or more in it. And I don't choose my show. The people in the audience choose the show. Now, I've done that over the internet, but I've now got a book. So we'll use a bit of numerology as well if you like. Do you want to hear a poem?
Yeah, absolutely. I love poetry. Go on.
Cool. Well, they're all very short. I realise people's attention spans. Oh, look, there's a butterfly. So I realise people's attention spans. They're all very short. Would you like to pick a number between 10 and 90, which is a big spread?
Go on. Go for 21.
21. Can I read you page 21 from my book?
Please do. Please do.
Okay. Go to page 21. It goes like this. If the banks are criminally banging on your door, and the only crime they pin on you is the class bullshit of being poor, and the sheriffs, bailiffs and Gardaí are just acting corporate whores, it's time for a revolution. When we get together and learn to be wise, and the system comes attacking in their varied forms of disguise, all you have to do is never recognise. It's time for a revolution. The controllers of our nation say that economic eviction is necessary to save the banks. Do you see the contradiction? And looking after their interests seems to be their predilection. It's time for a revolution. They write the statutes, change the laws, and breach the Constitution. It's affecting families' homes like a form of sick pollution. And nowhere in the future do they really deserve any absolution, because it's time for a revolution. Now, that was pretty apt for what we were talking about.
I would say it's pretty bang on it, wasn't it? that poetry reminds me. Have you ever met Simon Walsh? She's done a lot with the fracking and Balcombe, and
I haven't. I have to admit, I'm a crippled poet trying to do a radio.
He's got a very similar way of poetry, and it's pretty incisive. But so maybe one day you'll have him on the show, but he's
good stuff. Put me in contact; it'll be great.
And he was arrested at Balcombe for spouting poetry whilst just walking down the road there. Bit
really for spouting poetry. I've been on so many demonstrations in the UK. I lived in the UK for 26 years during the miners' strikes and the Kill the Bill, the old Criminal Justice Bill Act thing. And I used to get coppers to pick poems out of my bag.
Lovely stuff. No, that was very apt. Yeah, well done. I like the wordage there. Is that available to purchase, the book?
Oh, the book is available. Yes, it is available on my website.
Oh, yeah, I have to do that. That sounds good.
Brilliant. It's how I feed my children, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
So, Sean, you interview like a boxer who knocks them out and then helps them back up again and gives them a few free hits out of guilt. Then you give them a quick kiss. No offence, mate. Great show, sort of. You see, that's the sort of comment we have in our chat room. Isn't that brilliant?
Yeah, super. You've obviously got some very, very human-sounding people listening.
Do you know what? I'm learning. I mean, as I say, I have guests on my show, Ray, that I want them to share their information and their wisdom and their knowledge to the world. But I have had such an eye-opening experience coming onto what was then TNS and listening to the other shows. Absolutely blew my mind and woke me up in a major way.
Mm.
So welcome to the Pleasure Dome, as they say. Do you know, we've only got about 10 minutes left, and Ray, I've been quite vocal during our interview, and I'm not usually that vocal. Maybe I am. But I would like to say to you, what, if you were to say the last 10 minutes, what would you really like to get across about the reset and how it's moving forward?
Well, really, I'd like to for people to know who haven't actually heard of it. First of all, to have a look at the website and to log in and just to take that plunge so that we can be aware of who is where, so that we can start linking people up. And it's really, as you were saying, Sean, it's linking up people with just who are currently members of. The word's not disparate, but disparate in the fact that we're not unifying. We all know that this world is in a crisis, but this crisis can be the most incredible driver for change. And if we just unify, finding our commonalities en masse, then this nonsense can be over so quickly. And no matter who you call these control groups, they need our acquiescence to actually continue to exist, because without the mass, they are but the few. And there's so many people far more eloquent than I am that have actually put that over so well. And I'm sure you, listening to your great poem there, I'm sure there's a poem in your book that very eloquently describes that. And it really is just a matter of us getting together. And what we hoped with the reset was that we could actually create really just a vehicle that actually helps bring people together and start sharing an open dialogue in all of the sectors that really do need a reset. And it's pretty much everywhere. We need some sort of reset to bring about the changes that we can see happening. And I use the analogy of the radio station dial. We really haven't got to retune it much to bring about such huge change.
Absolutely, and there are also things that we should remember. This infrastructure that's been built by these psychopathic, greedy, bastard elites is there. It exists, and therefore can be used for great worth for the humanity in the future.
Absolutely, and my God, can't we enhance it?
Definitely.
With the entrepreneurial, and particularly with some of the young that are coming forward, if only we could allow them to blossom and flower. Some of the incredible ideas that are coming, yet these poor sods are sent on indoctrination courses called school and education to train to become good servants instead of, free-spirited and minded.
Can you imagine an education system that allows the freedom for us to learn from our children?
Wow. Yeah, well, I've been very privileged to be party to some sort of educational, I don't even like the word system, but sort of processes that are going around in pockets on the planet, and what they're producing is just so different to anything that I went through, or the mainstreamers purveying. So, yeah, I'm ready to conclude, and I don't know how long we've got, but to conclude, I'm more than hopeful. I absolutely do see such a catalyzing few months, in the next few, that we're going to see such changes, and it's great to be able to come on a station like this with obviously some very critical thinking people in your chat room and listening. And, you know, for you to take your time, you know, with the expertise that you've got with the poet, just the gift of the poetry there, let alone the critical thought, you know, and you think that's being multiplied up. You know, listening to this Anglican minister yesterday who calls himself a maverick, he said these gatherings are going on everywhere. This talk is going on everywhere, and we must be very heartened by that. All it now needs is for us to unify in a way that we never have on this planet before. Really unifying like the collection of cells in our body that work when they're working well, when they're working with the right health ingredients, the right nutrition, as your previous speaker was saying, in symbiosis. All we now have to do is to be the macro of the micro and start acting in symbiosis. And my God, we can quickly bring about such a change on this planet that will completely obsolete all the nonsense that's going on that's trying to subjugate us, and that has been, to a certain extent, successfully doing that because we've had our eye off the ball and we've not been behaving as cells interacting with each other.
And people over the centuries that have had their eye on the ball, they're the ones that have been reprimanded, treated like shite, and locked away their thoughts and their actions.
Yeah, more than reprimanded. Look how many have been knocked off just in the free energy world. You know, we know many of those.
Yeah, I mean, I've lost friends, went out to, you know, save forests in Brazil or whatever, and never returned. So lots of things have happened over the years, and we need to step forward. Ray Savage, thank you so much for coming on Out of the Bag and sharing what the reset is. I'm not that enlightened, to be honest. I think it's a great idea, a great concept. It sounds like a hub of a place to get people together. I feel we have that in People's Internet Radio, so maybe you guys want to come on here and have a listen to what's going on. I'd say it'd be great to have you back on, Ray, in a few months' time to talk about what has happened in these few months, and has there been a change? Has there been a direction towards a resetting? That would be fantastic.
Sean, I'd be really delighted to do that, and I'm absolutely blessed to have been able to have spent this time with you, which seems to have gone very, very quickly. And yeah, and it's so good that there is a radio station like this that is giving airtime. And I assure you, things are moving very, very quickly with the number of people that are joining and just want to get together from the different groups and unify and create a difference. And I don't give a damn what banner we unify under, as long as as long as we do unify. And I don't mind what name it is. And, yeah, as long as we do unify and we start to bring a collective difference, which we absolutely owe our children. You know, when I look into the faces of the young children that are being born today, my God, we owe it to them. And
we absolutely do.
We owe it to draw a line in the sand to this absolute ridiculous nonsense that's been going on that we've acquiesced to because we've had our eyes off the ball, or certainly a few of us have had our eyes off the ball, but are now firmly on it. And yeah, the change is happening. And
it's time to act as human beings. It's time to act as sovereign individuals and to not consent to this insanity.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Ray Savage, for coming on and talking about the reset. I want to thank Paul H. Dean for coming on earlier and talking about essential oils and essential information. And I want to say thank you all so much for listening. Love you loads. Great questions in the chat room for both parts of the show tonight. Really enjoyed the show myself. So thank you, Ray, and thank you, Paul. Thank you to all you. Thank you, Vin, for looking after the show as well. Cancel the Cabal is on immediately after me at midnight. So let's finish off with exactly what we've been doing. Talk, and life's what you make it. Good night, everyone.